the issue here. No one was saying that he was a champion of black people his entire life. The point was, regardless of who he is, his life mattered. His life was worthy of protection. In some ways, I am actually interested to think about what it means for us to fight for someone who wasn't perfect. Because very often we only fight for the middle class, cisgendered, straight, heterosexual guy who's going to college on Monday like Mike Brown, or we have to put Trayvon on a horse to say that he didn't need to die. And it's like, that's not the point. You shouldn't have to be perfect to
Well, I
live.
think it is the point because, and this is my problem with our community, is that Black Americans are hypocrites. We are hypocrites, right? So you say, oh, well, it's not the point. Well, where were we on the issues of kids getting shot, actual innocent Black victims being killed, every weekend, every day in the inner cities? Nobody cares. If you want to give somebody a funeral and you want to have it be 5 days long, why not do that for Tyshawn Lee, the 9-year-old kid who was wearing his school uniform and playing basketball when he was lured into an alley by, an older Black man who then shot him point blank in the head 2 times because he didn't like his dad. And it was like, it was gang violence. Nobody cared. So this whole idea of there's this uprising because you care about Black lives. Don't pretend you care about Black lives. You like the political expediency of caring about a Black life, if and only when they die at the hands of a police officer, or die at the hands rather of a white person, because it doesn't even have to be a police officer, as long as it's a white person. But we kill ourselves faster and nobody cares. So can you name the last 10 Black people that died of homicide in this country? Because it wasn't George Floyd.
Of course not. But
why not?
So because there is let me go to the first point you made. Tyshawn Lee, of course, that's something we should be sad about, and I think Black folk are. I've never met a Black person who didn't care about Black-on-Black
Where are the
violence.
Protests? No, the reason there's so much addiction, is because of drugs. The reason that there's drugs, and people point to the idea that, the CIA ran crack into the Black communities. But then when you want to talk about why we have this issue of drugs, we want to martyr somebody who went to prison 5 times for selling drugs. Armed robbery, you want to talk about violence? I mean, we're talking about a man. This is not a guy who just was bullying people. I mean, you force your way into a woman's home and put a pistol to her stomach and threaten to kill her as you rob her while she's pregnant, okay? This guy was a terrorist, in my opinion. I think we are literally martyring somebody who terrorized the Black community his entire life. I'm not comfortable with it. Now, if he had done a 180 at the end of his life, I believe in forgiveness. I'm not above, believing that people make mistakes, but this was not the story of George Floyd, and that is proven by the fact that he was on the most addictive drug that is in America today, which is fentanyl. Fentanyl is 100 times stronger.
But how does that make him a bad person?
How does it make him a bad person? I'm saying the idea, I'm attacking the narrative but then after his 9th stint in prison, which is, by the way, if you want to talk about a record, going to prison 9 times is very difficult to do, before you turn 40 years old, and he did it, okay? And then people wanted to say, then he moved to Minneapolis, changed his life around. I have a problem with the lie. I don't like a lie. He didn't change his life around. He was still doing drugs, he was still pushing drugs, and he was high on fentanyl and methamphetamine at the time of his arrest, which, by the way, fentanyl, quite literally, is what doctors give to patients when they want to bring down their breathing. And my problem is we can never have an honest discussion. There are so many Black victims in the world, true victims of homicide who have done nothing wrong. Maybe they were high school bullies.
But he was a true victim of homicide.
No, I'm saying, when I say, he was a true victim of a homicide, who knows at the end of the day, because right now there's disputes in the medical examiner reports. Some are saying that he actually died from fentanyl. His breathing was complicated by whatever. Then they got a private person. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to dispute the manner of his death, but I am going to agree that what Derek Chauvin did was an example of police brutality, regardless of whether or not is exactly what led to his death. I just don't think it's honest. It's not okay to me to elevate somebody who traumatized Black people their entire lives. He was a bad man, and is it relevant? Yeah. When you're putting him on t-shirts and you have little kids wearing posters and crying, yeah, that should not be your person that you're looking up to.
We're not singling out the police. We're saying that we should care about Black lives in all sectors. I mean, that's part of the argument you're making about Black-on-Black violence is one about saying we should care about Black life, not just when it's threatened by police, but everywhere. The movement for Black lives is saying, look, we care about poverty. We care about certainly state violence. We care about food insecurity. We care about all of these things because they connect.
But they're lying. That's the whole point. You can put that statement on your website, but then when your solution to that is to go into streets and to riot and to burn down and to loot, and every time they have a protest, it ends this way. Every time their narrative, like when I say becomes mainstreamed, every time their narrative, every time you go, whoop, we're doing Black Lives Matter again, you can bet your ass all across the nation, Black neighborhoods are going to burn, Black people are going to lose their jobs, and Black people are going to lose their lives, right? So that's the hypocrisy. The idea that they care about all this other stuff, when in fact every time they're protesting, it is specifically about police brutality, okay? And Black people suffer. So if your solution is worse than the problem, it's not a solution.
So
How many Black people have died in these George Floyd protests?
so that's
How many Black people have been arrested because of these George Floyd protests? How many Black people have been impoverished because of these George Floyd protests? That's when it's a good time to sit back and say, is what I'm doing working?